Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is Kid Nate of BloodyElbow.com. You got to put earphones in, dude. I'm getting terrible feedback.
You are? Shit.
Yeah, I can hear you. Anyway,
Okay, I'll mute. And then you.
off to a bang up start. This is the sixth round post fight show from BloodyElbow.com of UFC Fight Night 89, Thompson versus MacDonald, in which Stephen Wonderboy Thompson took a 5-round unanimous decision over Rory MacDonald, despite one judge giving MacDonald 2 rounds and a sort of a puzzler, but not a huge deal. But a pretty fun card. The co-main event, Donald Cerrone demolished Patrick Cote, third round TKO, 2 minutes 35 seconds, and Stephen Bossé and Sean O'Connell, the former hockey enforcer, had a wild Donnybrook in a very sloppy, poorly contested bout that was highly entertaining. Both guys gave it their all and beat the piss out of each other. We ready now?
Yeah, I'm here. I hear you. You don't hear yourself, do you?
I do not. So I'll fix. So Stephen Thompson, Roy MacDonald, Zane, pretty methodical. Heated up a little bit in the 5th round. MacDonald never had a clue. The rolling dive for the heel hook, sort of slick the first time he tried it, got nowhere, got less and less effective as time went on, and that seemed to be the extent of his strategery.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised the fight was slow because it did seem like the fact that both guys are really comfortable waiting out at range and looking to see what their opponent does meant that we could easily be in for that slow of a fight. But I was really surprised that MacDonald just seemed to have no plan for how to approach Stephen Thompson at all.
No, none. He in the 5th round, when he did close range, he didn't win every exchange, but at least he was in there landing. But of course, he lost the exchanges, and his nose turned into Blood River fairly quickly once he opened up. So you could kind of see why he didn't open up, because he definitely, I don't know what they were doing at TriStar, but they were not teaching Rory MacDonald how to decode the Wonder Boy.
Yeah, I mean, it just... Like, usually when he's out at range, when he's out on the outside, he keeps up a really solid stream of body kicks and jabs and just, like, little bits of offense to keep his opponent off balance and to kind of read and feel out his opponent. So as the fight goes on, he gets more comfortable, and in the late rounds, you see Rory MacDonald tend to turn it up when he feels like he's got his opponent decoded, but he had none of that outside offense, and by the time the fight got in the late rounds, you could tell that he had none of the decoding done at all. Like, he had not figured out, his eventual solution was just to bite down and try and sling leather at Thompson, and while he landed a few shots doing that, he ended up getting the worst of it every time. So he couldn't even do that and come out of it on top.
Yeah, no, Thompson's a vicious counterpuncher, and that's just a piss poor strategy against him. He's a dangerous striker, and MacDonald really needed to disrupt the game, disrupt the distance, mix things up, go for some takedowns, establish a clinch game. He's got the height. He should have been throwing some elbows in the clinch. I mean, not like I could do anything against Wonder Boy, but I mean, MacDonald has the physical skills to do this, and I'm really appalled at TriStar. I'm not the biggest fan of Zahabi and the gang, and I think they make their fighters too cautious, and that was a full strategy against Thompson. Is Thompson ready for a title shot?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he might as well get one off this performance, because even if this didn't excite fans, like, I mean, your other options are what, Damian Maia and who's...
That's pretty much, let's see. Yeah.
Maybe another shot for Carlos Condit, but that would be a hell of a lot of fun, but that,
yeah,
like, unless you're going to do a rematch with Condit, Thompson, like, Lawler is going to be a much better, more interesting matchup than MacDonald, because Lawler never fights that slow. Like, no. He is never the kind of guy to just hang back and purely wait on his opponent to see what they do.
No, definitely not. And he's got I think a more varied and skilled striking game than MacDonald. And even if he can't decode Wonder Boy, I think he will be trying to force the brawl and is very dangerous. And you know, MacDonald cracked Thompson a couple times, had some good combinations that landed. And if Lawler lands anything like that, it will disrupt Wonder Boy's thought processes and could totally remake the fight. Plus, Lawler's an underrated wrestler. So, I don't know. For MacDonald, it's a frustrating thing. This is a guy who came out of the gate, roared out of the gate early on in his career, and has definitely not lived up to that potential.
Yeah, I mean, I really do tend to think that guys who start fighting in MMA in their teens tend to build like a elite block in their style. That's just like they learn too many of the wrong things when they're at a bad gym too early in their career, or they get, they take too much cage wear on their bodies while they're still developing physically. Whatever it is, there just seems to be a lot of these guys who start when they're that young never seem to get the potential that they're always hyped as having. It just seems like over and over again we see kids that it's like, oh, he's 18 or 19, he's going to be a monster and he's going to be great for another 15 years, and by the time he's 30, he's retired.
Yeah, it's we've seen it time and again. Joe Stevenson is one I think of who started when he was 16 or 17 and was a husk of a man by his mid-20s. I mean, of a professional fighter, still quite a man. But yeah, Thompson, I like his chances against Lawler for the title. I don't know who I would pick yet, but should be a fun fight. MacDonald, is this the last fight on his contract, or does he have more?
Yes, this is the last fight on his contract. Yeah. So that's a hell of a bad way to end your contract. I mean,
yes, it's absolutely a bad way. And of course, MacDonald's infamous for talking about his desire for free agency on the MMA Hour, leading to Ariel Helwani allegedly being fired from Fox on the orders of Lorenzo Fertitta. So that's a charming tale. And now MacDonald's going to be casting his bread upon the waters. Bellator with Viacom in disarray might be, I mean, you'd definitely be interested in him if you're Bellator, but he's not in a position where he's going to be commanding big bonuses or anything like that. And UFC, he's important to them in the sense that they need something to get going in Canada again, because right now Steve Bossé is what they got.
I mean,
the Canadian Kimbo, as I like to call him.
He's already like kind of a better fighter. I mean, he's already basically a better fighter than Kimbo Slice. At the very least, he seems to be a better prepared fighter than Kimbo Slice in terms of MMA.
Yeah, but a little bit. I mean, he's got the hockey enforcer's multiple right hands and
he fought a full 15 minutes without gassing out. He fought super hard for 15 minutes. Like, say what you want to will about him technically. He may not be a better technical fighter, but he's a much better physically prepared fighter.
Yes, true. And that was a very fun fight. We're skipping over the co-main event, though. Let's talk about Cerrone demolishing Patrick Cote. Classic case of if you let Cerrone heat up and open up on you, you're in a world of shit. Cerrone is one of those fighters because when he loses, he looks awful. And when he wins, he looks invincible.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was funny because a lot of people were like, oh, I think Cote's got this. He's bigger, he's stronger, and Cerrone is such a slow starter and all that. And then I went back and I watched tape and I'm like, Cote is not exactly dynamite out of the gate these days. And otherwise, technically, Cerrone has a huge edge everywhere. And especially we saw early on, Cerrone has a massive wrestling and grappling advantage over Cote. And once that part of the fight was gone for Cote, it became just a straight kickboxing match, and Cerrone demolished him.
Yeah, just beat the piss out of him and used his grappling to dominate him on the ground as well. I mean, he got him down over and over again in dominant positions, and that definitely wore Cote out and took him out of his game. Cote just was never in the fight, and it was a mercy killing by the third round when Cerrone beat him 235 into the third round TKO from punches. So what's next for Cerrone? Is he a contender in welterweight, or is he just dicking around taking money fights?
I mean, he could contend. I don't think Cerrone's. Like, I don't really want to see him in a title fight because I don't think it's important for Cerrone being a fun, great fighter. Like, I don't think he fights necessarily that well when he's got when he has to wait a long time and he has a ton of pressure. Like, if they're like, okay, we're going to have you wait 6 months and build you up for this massive welterweight title fight, then he's even said himself that he gets in his own head sitting around, that he hates sitting around and waiting, and that's one of the reasons he fights so often.
Yeah.
And
he's got attention deficit disorder in a big way.
Yeah, so I would actually, I'd just rather see him take whatever fight he can that's out there. And if he can Bisping his way into a title and like, oh my God, we need somebody last minute and you've got wins, go ahead and fight for it, then sure. But I wouldn't actually want to see him be set up as a next title challenger. I'd rather just see him.
I don't want to see him on the shelf either. I mean, he fought 4 times in 2015, twice so far this year, 4 times in 2014. And other than the times he's faced Rafael dos Anjos recently, he's beat everybody he's faced, frequently by utter destruction. So, yeah, Cerrone's bringing the entertainment. I expect to see him headlining more cards in the future. And, yeah, if they can get a run at a title run, I think Bisping his way the title is the best way. He's there. He's ready. Give him 2 weeks' notice, and he will be good. But let's talk about the very fun light heavyweight Steve Bossé, Sean O'Connell fight. A total Donnybrook slobber knocker. O'Connell was really jacking Bossé up in the first round, knocked him on his ass, knocked him stiff, but Bossé rode it out. I was actually thinking that the ref was being a sadist when he didn't stop it in the first round. Bossé rode it out and came back and turned those right hands loose on him.
Yeah, I was impressed by how much better O'Connell looked early, but once the sort of early flurry was survived, this became very much like just O'Connell being tough as shit and willing to throw anything and everything all the time, and Bossé landing massive power shots that hurt O'Connell a lot but could never put him away, and it was just an insane fight. Like, I can't believe how hard and how well they fought for 15 minutes as light heavyweights.
Yeah.
And in the third round, Bossy's still out there like bouncing around, flurrying. I'm just like, what the hell? Nobody in this division outside of the top, 2 or 3 fighters does that.
And not to be cynical, but I look forward to everybody passing their drug tests.
Yeah, so, whatever. I don't even care. I really try not to care.
I don't either, although because of the dangerous implications of the drug use, I'm all for drug testing, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, fights like this are worth virtually any price. They're taking a horrific cost, and these guys health.
I don't think either of these dudes are going to remember this fight or this week or, maybe 2 out of their 3 names.
Yeah. It's but that's the name of the game, and it was delightful. It was really thrilling, and I was talking to people online who were bitching about the low skill level, and yeah, it could have been a World Series of Fighting prelim for all the skill that was on display, but the entertainment value was extraordinary. Bossé's a personality. The fight had dynamics. I enjoyed it. That's what I paid my money for, and it was very fitting that it came on after the Kimbo Slice tribute.
Yeah, fuck the people who are like, oh, it's just not skilled enough for me. And it's like, come on. I love a skilled fight. I do. I was happy to see Stephen Thompson win the way he was. He did. Parts of it were boring, but he also did really well, followed a plan, and executed it well. But I want to see I want to see 2 dudes beat each other half to death too. If I didn't, this is not the right sport for you.
No, this is a frequently brutal and ghastly sport, and if you don't get off on the brutality, what are you doing here? So, yeah, it was big fun. And then in the second fight on the main card, Olivier Aubin Mercier survived a little scare from Thibaut Goudy and got a 3rd-round submission. What do you think of that one?
Aubin Mercier looks like he's getting better at the things he's bad at, but it seems like one of those cases, too, where it's suddenly understanding how steep a hill he has to climb, where it's like, yeah, okay, your striking's a bit better, you're landing some good shots, but you're still getting randomly outclassed by some dude who's filling a roster spot at the bottom of lightweight.
Yeah.
Goudy is not terrible, but he's not anybody anybody's talking about, excited about, interested in, looking for, anything like that.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy who's going to find himself fighting Aubin Mercier on a Canadian card on short notice. So, there you go. Aubin Mercier, I don't know. he disappointed me when he first came in the UFC. I've since not had any expectations, and he's delivered. So, be that as may. But then in the opener, women's flyweight, Joanne Calderwood and Valerie Letourneau, third round TKO for Calderwood. She looked pretty fearsome.
Yeah, I mean, I said it going into this fight that I think that Calderwood really, she's one of those fighters that when her life is going poorly, she fights terribly. And when her life is going well and things are good for her in her life, she is a completely different fighter. Like just the fearlessness and the amount of confidence she has is totally different out there. And in this fight, she got hit a ton.
Yeah.
But when she's happy and when she's confident, she can take all that, and then she's one of the most creative strikers in women's MMA. And she's able to, throw out a huge bag of tricks that keep her opponents off balance all the time. And I was totally, totally shocked that she was able to knock out Letourneau and to do it with body work. I mean, I thought that Letourneau was basically a lock for this because she's the more athletic, harder punching, faster fighter in there, and she was for 2 rounds. But Calderwood would hit takedowns when she had to. She mixed up all her kicks and her angles, and she threw everything she needed to whenever she needed to throw it, and got a great win out of it. I'm really excited to see her I'm excited to see her keep being this happy, because when she's happy, she's a shit ton of fun to watch.
Yeah, it was fun. And what is the meaning of women's flyweight in the UFC? There's no rankings for this. Is this a division? Is this random?
I think it's just random for now. I hope it's a division because I don't give a shit about women's 135. I don't think it doesn't show any signs of growing in a way that's interesting long term. And I think that there are enough women at 125 or at 115 who would like to move up, and enough women at 125 out on the circuit right now that could fill out a division, that I would much rather see women's 125 get made as a long-term division. But with Calderwood already talking about wanting to go right back to 115, I don't see this as anything more than a sort of like that Sam Stout KJ Noons fight we got, where it was like 2 guys who were just like, okay, yeah, I'll take a fight up a division, why not?
Yeah,
I think we might get a little of that, but I don't see it as a division
and
for a while.
I don't have any problem with that. I would like a little bit more random. I do not believe much in the notion of the UFC as a true winnowing field for the best athlete to rise to the top. It's just too hard to have enough fights for everybody to get to fight each other. And it's not like tennis or amateur wrestling where you can play out all the combinations and then do it in a pretty fair and scientific way. It's very random. Fighters fight at different paces. Some guys will fight 4 times a year. Some people fight once a year. It's very hard to make all the pieces come together. The variability of the performances is so high because of your attitude, your health, your training, your personal life, your finances, whatever, that I don't know, it doesn't mean anything. Let's see fights, keep it fun. Anyway, let's run through the opener. Four fights were on the Fight Pass card, 4 fights were on the Fox Sports 2 card. Actually, a couple more went on the Fox Sports 2 card because NASCAR ran late, but be that as it may, it opened up with Ali Bagatinov squeaking by Jean Herrera, unanimous decision, but much closer fight than it looks on the scorecards, where Bagatinov blanked him on every judge's card.
Well, it's sort of it was like a closer fight and also a complete shit kicking.
Yeah, Ali beat the piss out of him, but nearly got submitted a couple times.
Exactly. It's like Herrera was totally outclassed in that fight, but he's such a great athlete and such an aggressive grappler that he was able to jump on some subs out of nowhere that put Bagatinov in real trouble. But every moment that Bagatinov wasn't almost getting submitted, he was beating the hell out of John Herrera.
Yeah, and a variety of positions on the ground, standing up. Bagatinov, I don't know, this guy has fought his way down to the opening fight on Fight Pass, barely squeaks by Herrera, who's anything but a notable name in the division. But Bagatinov brings it. He hits hard. I don't mind watching him, so it is what it is. Then you had Colby Chaos Covington, that inaptly nicknamed Colby Chaos. He had to be Colby the Blanket Covington, but he submitted Jonathan Mercier in 3 rounds, 54 seconds. Meunier in 54 seconds of the 3rd round. dominant wrestling performance from Covington.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see it because I'm happy to watch a good wrestler actually put on like a positional clinic and go through all the top ride stuff with the guy turtling and moving underneath him. So I'm fine with that. But I mean, Covington just has to keep showing that he can add something to his game beyond just wrestling. And here he added, he showed that he can hit a submission, which is nice.
Yeah,
And
that really, really makes you a much more dangerous fighter.
yeah,
And adds a huge dimension. We haven't seen as many of the old Matt Hughes, Jake Shield style wrestler grappler as we used to, but I still think it's a pretty viable path, much more so than either wrestler or submission artist alone. Then you had a catch weight 117.5 pound fight between Ronda Marcos and Jocelyn Jones Linebarger. Marcos took a unanimous decision. What do you think of this one?
I don't know. Marcos kind of won despite herself. Like it just like there's so much stuff she does that's so ugly with her combination punching where she'll like run 3 steps past her opponent if they move out of the way even a little, and her poorly timed wrestling entries and stuff like that. But she just threw more strikes than Linebarger and hit a little harder and just kind of outworked her for a pretty ugly decision. I mean, it was one of those fights that I wouldn't want to revisit, and it doesn't make me happy, but she did enough to get an ugly win.
Yes, and speaking of ugly wins, middleweight Elias Theodoro beat Smiling Sam Alvey unanimous decision in a slow-moving, painful canker sort of a fight. Theodoro realized Alvey has nothing but punches, so he just kept him at kicking range, even though he doesn't have the most effective kicking game, and just basically kept him at range. And Alvey got frustrated, hit him a couple times, but never could really force the fight he wanted.
No, Theodoro fought. It would have been nice to see him push a more technical wrestling and grappling game to go with that. I would have liked to see him find some better shot entries and chain wrestle better. But at the end of the day, if he couldn't get that going, he fought the fight he needed to and just picked Alvey apart. And that was a maddening loss to me because I think Alvey took about 1/10 of the opportunities that he had. Every time he actually sat down and threw a couple strikes instead of just watching, he either landed clean or, really came really close to hurting Theodoro. But he threw like 15 strikes the whole fight, and he would clinch Theodoro and then just lean on him up against the cage. It's like, you have thrown no strikes this round. You have this guy in the pocket, and all you're doing is watching the clock and waiting this round out. I have no idea what Alvey was thinking in there at all.
Yeah, it's entirely possible he had a hurt hand or who knows, but he wasn't on his game tonight, and Theodoro took a decision in a painful fight. All right, then you had the opener on the Fox Sports 2 card. Bantamweight Joe Soto submitted Chris Beal. Third round, rear naked choke, 3 minutes, 39 seconds. Beal looked more athletic, and Soto gritted it out and got the choke in the third round.
Yeah, what a crazy fight. I mean, Beal for like a round and a half looked like the fighter that all of the people who saw him on Tough and, just see explosive and athletic thought he would be. Well, he's never really been that consistent or smart a fighter. But suddenly in this fight, for a round and a half, he just looked amazing. He looked like he'd put everything together. And then in the second round, he just started fighting like Soto could never hurt him and that he could never get tired. And he started just putting on this ridiculous wide open pace and suddenly started getting clipped and started getting tired. And then from there, the fight just turned into a messy brawl until Soto finally jumped on him and choked him out. So crazy fight, great win for Soto.
Yeah, and a display of pretty abysmal fight IQ from Beal. And it just goes to show you, don't jack around with a professional mixed martial artist like Joe Soto. He's not a contender. He's not a great talent, but he's solid all around, and he's not there to jack around. He's there to fucking fight, and he will jack you up if you mess with him, which Chris Beal didn't take him seriously and paid the price. Then you had middleweight Krzysztof Jotko just annihilate Tamden the Barn Crap McCrory. 59-second knockout and stiffened him with a couple of follow-up hammer punches on the ground that really should have been prevented because McCrory, it was scary. It was a classic John Matua headshot seizure moment, and it was scary and unpleasant. But
yeah, I had this
Jocko.
Very, very. I had all this like talk and theory to tweet out going through the fight, and I'm like getting ready to go through all this technical stuff about how McCrory applies his game and how Jocko applies his game, and then Jocko just flatlined him with a forehead punch of all things. And I mean, McCrory's got miles of forehead, so it's an easy target. I knew that joke was
coming, but yeah.
I mean, you so rarely see a punch to the forehead knock a dude out. Usually it's the chin or the jaw or the behind the ear. Yeah. And it's rarely just right on the forehead. I mean, maybe it was more the temple, which would make a little more sense.
I think it was the temple, and I also think that kind of concussion sent his brain slopping around in his skull. And, it was a very well-landed shot. And McCrory's height and everything just made his head a perfect target for Jocko. Is Jocko, where is he?
I gotta think he's moving up to being a dark horse contender to me. Like this puts him at the fringes of the top 15, and honestly, in that middleweight division, dudes on a win streak, whoever it's over, are super few and far between. Like
hell, Dan Henderson's ranked 13, and he's getting a title shot. So
I know. Like, it is so hard to find young talent rising up the ranks at 185, so you've got to be looking at Jocko as somebody who's going to sneak into the top 10 soon. And when he does that, he could, any one random win could put him in contention.
Yeah, and he looks like he could get some random wins. I mean, he looks like a serious threat, to anybody in the division. So. Who would you like
the top of 185 is aging out fast. So there are guys like Lyoto Machida and Anderson Silva around who are huge names that can get a guy like skyrocketing up in notoriety and are winnable fights for people at this point.
Absolutely. So, who would you like to see him fight next?
I think if I'm looking at the middleweight division right now, I mean. A fight with Thiago Santos would be really pretty cool as the two top rising prospects at middleweight right now. Otherwise, I'd be happy to see him, kick it with somebody right at the fringes of that top of the division too. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think. I was trying to think if Marquardt won his last fight, but he didn't. He fought Thiago Santos. I don't know. It's hard to find dudes that are winning fights up there. Like maybe Rafael Natal or Brad Tavares if Tavares comes back from injury. I mean, I'd even be happy to see him face Whitaker, but Whitaker deserves something bigger. Yeah,
Whitaker's ready for bigger and better things. But Jocko would be an interesting test for him, and that would be a fun fight. Then let's see what was next on the card. Let's see. This was a fun light heavyweight fight between Misha Kirkunov and Ion Cutelaba. Submission arm triangle choke in the third round. Pretty good back and forth. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I actually really liked what I saw, especially from Cirkunov in this fight, in that, I mean, he really just decided to go strike for strike with Cutelaba for a lot of the fight, Cutelaba being pretty much just a pure boxer, coming out with a boxing background from that, Romanian scene he's been fighting on, Moldova.
Yeah.
And Cirkunov, he got hit in there, but he generally looked like a much better striker than he has ever before. And then, of course, the moment the fight did hit the mat, he just choked him out immediately. So, to me, that's a much better sign from Cirkunov in a division where he's going to have to punch it out with some people. To see him face somebody low down in the division, punch it out, survive, land the better shots. I mean, I had him winning both the first and second round just striking. And then get the sub immediately when he wanted to in the third. So, to me, it was a great fight for him.
Yeah, and so exciting to see in the light heavyweight division. Then we had lightweight Jason Sago beat Leandro Silva by split decision. Not the best fight of the night.
No, this was Silva still has problems maintaining output and being not just sitting back and watching opponents. And Sago in the third round, he suddenly found the boxing game that seems to have eluded him for his entire career, and he looked like a much better fighter because of it. But before that, he was mostly just kind of kicking Silva at range, hitting the occasional random takedown, and not doing a lot to make the fight fun.
No, really not. But anyway, that's the card. Again, in the main event, Stephen Thompson decisioned Rory MacDonald in a fairly slow fight, heated up in the 5th round. Thompson looked sharp. I mean, he had his takedown defense. He was landing his kicks. He was landing his punches, counter-punching, combinations. I think he's ready for Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the kind of thrilling performance that are going to make fans excited, but technically I think he's ready for a title shot. He's as ready as he's going to be, and you might as well get him in there. And I think that Lawler's a much different fight than MacDonald and should be a more exciting fight. So I don't want to hold off on what could be a very exciting title fight just because this fight didn't look good.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to be a factor. Thompson's got the highlight reel. I don't think that's that big a factor. All right, so Donald Cerrone, hopefully we'll see him fight maybe in 2 weeks, maybe over the July 4th weekend. Who knows? Cerrone could pop up at any time. He might be.
Whenever, whoever, whatever. I'm happy to watch Donald Cerrone fight. You know, I love the guy for always being out there to make a card more entertaining.
Yeah, and this card definitely needed it. Although you had the Bossé, Sean O'Connell, Donnybrook, which was highly entertaining, although not exactly edifying. Anyway, that's our show. Subscribe to us, MMANation.com on YouTube, MMA Nation on iTunes. Read us at bloodyelbow.com. Follow us on Twitter, at KidNate, at TheZaneSimon. We'll take a couple weeks off, and then we're going to have a ton of UFCs, the big July Fight Expo thingamajig. We're going to have 2 fights before we'll have
Alvarez versus Dos Anjos, and then Calderwood, Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus
Calderwood,
Claudia Gadelha.
Yeah. And then we've got Cormier versus Jones 2, UFC 200 is the big fight of that week. So anyway, we'll have all the fixins. Eugene will be back tomorrow night with Knuckle Up. We'll have If I Did It next week, and then rolling in, we'll figure out how we're going to do previews for all these fights, but we'll have vivisections and care don't cares and all the usual fixins, heavy hands, etc., etc. So adios, MMA aficionados. Thanks a lot, Zane. We'll see you next time.